Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 4 of the Secret Signing Tunnel, where the rumors don't go away and the player movements never end. Molly will, of course, be sharing this episode across all these platforms as well, so make sure you tune in so that you don't miss anything. Molly, how's your weekend, mate? Anything exciting happen? Yep, strap yourselves in. All right, let's get stuck straight into it with a couple of key signings that have been made official. Terrell May, he did end up going to the Tigers after all. Molly, what does that mean for the Tigers and what does that mean for Terrell May?
Yeah, well, I think it's a chance for Terrell May to sort of prove himself, redeem himself. There've been all these question marks about him. It's really one of the mysteries of the off season. Why the Roosters would get rid of the guy who I rate the best impact player off the bench last season, particularly when they've lost their real enforcer in Jared Warrer-Hargraves. So they ensure me that there's nothing untoward going on, as in he didn't misbehave off the field. It was just a case of they thought he wasn't the right fit. His attitude may not have been 100%. So it's a chance for him. But things are going to be a lot tougher at the Tigers than they were at the Roosters. I'm sure he realises that. But they've got him. They've got Royce Hunt. I like the look of the Tigers. I think they're a much better team than last year, and I don't think they're going to finish last, which after 3 seasons of suffering is probably the thing Tigers fans want to hear.
Absolutely agree with you, Molly. I think they're, almost working towards that top 8 if they can keep their I guess, depth of their squad nice and healthy, especially on a Terrell May front. He can really be one of the main enforcers there with Stefano leaving to the Storm. I think Terrell May can really stamp his authority as the leader and enforcer of that forward pack that, he could have really done the same thing at the Roosters. So maybe he doesn't sip lattes or something. Who knows? That could be it. And Lockie Ilias, he's off to the Dragons. He's yeah. I'll look, to be honest. When we looked at the short list of those 5 players, he certainly wasn't first pick on my list. But look, he's had a bit of a rough year last year with the injury to his broken leg. But he's got Braithen Asher in his corner. The Dragons are in much need of a halfback. Looks like Kyle Flanagan may shift to 5'8" as a result of this signing. Look, I think this is great for both the Dragons and for Lockie Ilias's career moving forward because he's sort of come under the fire a little bit at the Rabbitohs, and I don't think it was entirely his fault. I think there's a few other players at the Rabbitohs who really didn't stand up in those key moments, and unfortunately, most clubs look to their halfback and leaders for answers, and unfortunately, they dropped Ilias. He got injured, but now he's got his chance to really stamp his authority there at the Dragons.
Yeah, that's right, Diz. And I can tell you, I don't think they've made it official yet, but they did agree to terms on Saturday, but only after a stringent medical. As you mentioned, he got injured. It was a badly broken leg. And so I think he had, I've been told, 2 medicals just to make sure the leg was right. I don't think he's 100% yet, but we've still got, 3-4 months till the start of next season. So fingers crossed for him and for the Dragons that it comes good.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the viewers' questions, Johnny Utah, I know you don't want to get into this, and neither do I really, but he said, who will get and change it to who right now really needs to make some signings? Otherwise, they could be in big trouble for next season. Does any club come to mind?
Well, the Tigers, as we just mentioned, the expectations there, they've spent all this money on Jerome Luai, on Royce Hunt, on Terrell May. The fans are sick of coming last. As we said, they've got a good squad. Benji's had the first year honeymoon. So I think the pressure's on the Tigers. If they come last again, Shane Richardson is not the sort of guy who suffers that sort of thing lightly. I think there'll be changes there for sure. And if you want a second team, probably the Dragons are under the pump as well. They've lost Hunt, they've lost Lomax. their two main men from last year. So, the fans, I think, are saying, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, just looking at the ladder, just for a couple of those teams that could well and truly be under the pump, that I don't think will be under the pump next season, but stranger things have happened. The Rabbitohs, surely they bounce back from a disastrous campaign, finishing, second last and only avoiding the spoon by 2 points.
Yeah, that's right, and no one sacks Wayne Bennett, so I think you'll be looking at a more consistent season from the Rabbitohs. But yeah, they were a major disappointment last season, and they really need Latrell for starters to stand up. But I wrote a story last week about how good he looks, and we put a photo up, and he looks. You almost can't recognise him. He's so much trimmer and thinner than last season. He's lost a heap of weight. So, things are looking good for them because when Latrell plays well, Souths win.
Yeah, let's hope he leads by example on and off the field. Now, two teams that sort of spring to my mind that are really under the pump. I think the Warriors are going to bounce back. I'm just looking at the ladder now. They finished in 13th place. The Dolphins, they scare me a little bit. The whole when Wayne Bennett leaves factor tends to result in teams slipping down the ladder. Let's see what happens there. The Raiders, I think, overachieved last year, and they could be in a little bit of strife. I know the viewers and listeners can't see Molly's outfit, but he's wearing the Canberra Milk out. Well, it's not even Canberra Milk. Oh, yes, it is. It is the Canberra Milk. He's got the Raider on the chest there. The two teams, however, the Titans and the Eels. Look, I know the Eels have signed Lomax and Addo-Carr and Iongi from the Panthers. Do you think that they're lacking any other positions? Bearing in mind, you've got Hopgood coming back from injury. You've got Mitch Moses sort of coming back from injury. Dylan Brown was injured there for a little bit. Their hooking position and their front row seems a little bit light on, though, with Campbell Gillard leaving now.
Yeah, it does for sure. And I was very surprised, quite frankly, that Jason Riles basically showed Campbell Gillard the door because I thought he was one of the more consistent players last season. I thought he would have looked at Junior Paulo as more the guy to go because he's on big dollars and he did not perform last season. So I guess the pressure's on Junior Paulo to show that Jason Riles went the right way. But yeah, their roster is a top 8 roster for sure. Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses, as you say, the halves, if they're both fit and firing, they missed Moses last year for sure. I think he only played 8 to 10 games, and that put a lot of pressure on Dylan Brown, who then got hurt. So it all sort of fell apart. Clint Gutherson's gone. It'll be interesting to see how things go there. He's been such an institution at the Eels, but strong roster. Josh Addo-Carr will add some real spice to the back line. He wins games. If he only wins 1 or 2 games, that can mean the difference between making the 8 and missing the 8. So yeah, I expect the Eels to bounce back for sure.
Yeah, it's really Mitchell Moses' time to shine. He's, get given the keys. He's probably going to be announced as the next captain of the club now that Gutho's left. I think that's inevitable. The Titans was the other team that I was mentioning. They've picked up Regan Campbell-Gillard, obviously, from the Eels. Do you think that they need to... I've seen some photos of David Fifita. He's looking very, very sharp. He's looking very, very fit. But I have seen this happen in the past as well, and he's sort of got a little bit more unfit as the season's gone on. So I'm not really sure what his habits are sort of off the field there. But are the Titans in danger of, you know, falling down the pecking order towards the wooden spoon? Because they came 14th last year, which wasn't fantastic. They looked like they were going to maybe make the 8 there at one moment, but they did start off, I think it might have been, 0-6 last year, and really struggling.
Yeah, they're an enigma, the Titans, aren't they? And David Fifita is probably the biggest enigma of them all. On his day, he can be the best second rower in the game, but then he drifts in and out of games. And against good sides, he tends to struggle a bit. He goes missing, and he's got this reputation of being a bit of a flat track bully against the likes of the Tigers and the Dragons. He'll score tries, he'll set up tries, but you put him up against Penrith and he goes very quiet. But I really like the look of the Titans. I think Jaden Campbell's an absolute champion. They got Kieran Foran calling the shots. I really
Gordon, they got big raps on him coming through the grades. So obviously, probably have the money and the opportunity to go out and jag a decent half. But they've got a bit of raps on the young fella who used to play for Union.
and they've got speed. Alfonso on the wing is as good as anyone as far as finishing and scoring tries. Jojo Fafita's very quick. I rate Brian Kelly. I reckon across the paddock, they're one of the fastest teams in the NRL.
Keeney is probably, if not one of the best young players in the game right now, the best young player in the game right now. Super exciting to watch, and a lot of their attack revolves around both him and Jaden Campbell. So let's expect some exciting things for the Titans next season. Now back into a few more signing news. Pappy signed a 1-year extension at the Storm, which will keep him at the club till 2026. For those of you who don't know, it's actually an extension on his 2025 contract that he already had. That means that the Dogs have sort of pulled the plug or missed out on that opportunity. And it seems like Ben Hunt is not going to go to the Dogs anymore either, and more than likely going to end up at Red Hill. What news have we got there?
Yeah, it's looking that way, isn't it? I mean, he's running out of teams. We were saying it's now come down to the Dolphins or the Broncos, and he wants to win a comp. He was a Bronco from the age of 12, so there's a sort of very romantic story there about the return home if it happens, and I'd say it's just about over the line, and they could use him as a halfback or hooker with Adam Reynolds getting older, starting to get some injuries, and the hooking spot, one of their probable weaknesses. I can see him a great fit at the Broncos, and I think he'd be a terrific signing. I really thought he'd be great at the Bulldogs. I thought he was just what they need, but didn't come to be. So I reckon he'll go to the Broncos and really spur the Broncos and get him back in the eight. I think he's a quality player, and it could be one of the signings of the year for sure.
Yeah, and I believe that deal, probably will become official at some point this week. We're under the impression it's a 2-year deal, 1.1 million over 2 seasons, and apparently a job afterwards, which is obviously extremely attractive for a player like Ben Hunt, whose seasons are getting narrower and narrower left in the NRL at his age. Will he make 400 games? Who knows? Now, a question from Luke Sullivan. It's quite an interesting one here, Molly. Any update on Bateman? And I'm probably going to throw Bud Sullivan into this one as well. I know we've mentioned him in weeks gone by, but there seems to be no update on Bateman. Manly look to have pulled the pin on Bateman now. So I don't know where he's going, but he's definitely not going to be staying at the Tigers. Benji doesn't want him there, and I don't think he wants to be there either. If he does go and they offload Bud Sullivan too, which I know they're trying to do as well, that means they've got extra room in their salary cap, right? So they still might have one signing left up their sleeve before the start of the season next year.
Yeah, that's true. They definitely want to get rid of both of them, but it's at the stage contract wise where if they do get rid of them, I'm sure they're going to have to pay some of their money. So that sort of dilutes that salary cap space. But yeah, if they manage to move both of them on, there'll be some room there for sure, and they could pick up a bargain buy in the next couple of months. Smart thing to do is always keep one spot open because you never know what's going to happen. Apart from anything, someone could break a leg at training, and all of a sudden you've got a big hole in your roster. So it's probably pretty smart business by the Tigers. Yeah, I can see Bateman seems to be running out of clubs, and it surprises me. I thought he was one of the Tigers' better players last season. You could see he was really busting his gut. He was trying hard. He was revving up his teammates. He is 34 years old, a lot of miles under the hood. I can probably see him going back to England and finishing his career there. But again, the Tigers will have to weigh in some of the freight.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of Super League, Tane Milne looks to be going to Huddersfield Giants, I believe.
Yeah, that's the mail, and I think South's happy to let him go. It's a pity because he's a talented player, but he does some silly things on the football field. A couple of times last year, he got himself in trouble with silly penalties, sin bins at crucial times in games. But he's a big, strong centre. I can see him really doing some damage at Huddersfield, and I'm being told it's just about done, that deal.
Yeah, and geez, the Giants are certainly building a formidable roster there. They might even challenge, for that top four. I know they sort of been towards the bottom half of the ladder over recent years, sort of in the middle last year. But just some of the players that they've got. They've got young Harry Rushton, who had a bit of time over here playing for Canberra in their side. I believe they've also got his brother Tom Burgess has gone there from South. Jacob Gagai has gone there from South. Young Zach Wolford from Canberra's gone down there. Gone over there, and now Tane Mill, and it's going to be sort of like the Raiders and South show over at that club by the sounds of it.
Yeah, they've definitely got some money to spend, and it'll be good because it's you want these battling teams to move up the ladder. But same over here, it's gets a little bit boring if it's every year the Penrith, Melbourne, Roosters, Bulldogs show, and it's basically the same over there with Wigan, Warrington, St Helens. So be nice to see a battling club like Huddersfield up there challenging them for sure.
Yeah. And just to finish off today's episode, back to the Tigers, speaking of integral signings for the future, Fanua Pole has re-signed with the club for 2 seasons, which is a massive boost. I know there were some rival clubs sort of circling for his signature. They certainly would be a key addition at most clubs. But for him to stay at the Tigers is big for them.
Yeah, he's something special. If he was playing at Penrith or one of these big clubs, Melbourne or the Roosters, they'd be talking about him as a future Origin player because he's at the battling Tigers and they're losing most weeks. He goes unnoticed, but he's a big, strong kid. I think he's only 21, 22. He's had a couple of seasons in the NRL now. A good off season. I expect a massive year for him next season. And you're right, Diz, a really good signing.
Yeah. And last but not least, the Robson news is sort of heating up a little bit there. The Cowboys are currently in a situation where they're looking at potentially extending that. Whether or not he agrees is another story, but there is a couple of rumours that he may end up at the Chooks. So everyone watch this space because there might be a little bit more extra movement this week in that situation.
Yeah, that one might drag out a bit. I can see the Roosters are very keen. You and I have both heard this. The Cowboys obviously want to keep him. He's the Blues Origin hooker. The smartest thing for him to do is just to sit on his hands for a while, play a bit of footy next season, and watch his price go up. But whether he does that or takes the money and runs, we'll have to wait and see.
That's it. Well, thanks again for joining us on another week of the Secret Signing Tunnel. Make sure you tune in 6 p.m. Mondays every single week for the latest news when it comes to player movement.
Disclaimer: any views or opinions represented in this podcast and or Facebook and social media pages are personal and belong solely to the podcast owners and do not represent those of people, institutions or organizations that the owners may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. Unless explicitly stated, any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, organization, club, company, or individual. All content provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only. The owners of this podcast make no representation as to the accuracy or completeness of any information on this site or found by following any link on this website. Owners will not be liable for any errors or omissions in this information, nor for the availability of this information. The owners will not be liable for any losses, injuries, or damages from the display or use of this information.